Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Tuesday, April 16th. This is our 2019-2020 corporate budget hearing. Right now, we will hear opening remarks by Mayor Palacco.
Well, attached, you received a balanced budget for the 2019-20 for the city's general fund, and it provides a small increase to the fund balance. All the increases per the union contract have been included, as well as proposed increases to non-union employees. This budget will also allow us to open up the senior centers for 5 days, opening up on Friday starting this fall. In addition, the DPW highway budget has included 2 new dump plow trucks that are badly needed. The police budget has 7 new police vehicles. Police budget also includes 2 additional police officers for the creation of 2 new school resource officers. And this has been worked with for both, one for D7 and the other for Crestwood School District. Each district has agreed to be responsible for paying half the cost of the officers, and that is reflected in the revenue portion of the budget. There's also money allocated for IT upgrades for PCs and the system. Budget also includes the next mandatory upgrade for the city's dispatch center. And I would strongly suggest that the council take a look because the Michigan State Police are putting rather significant requirements for the next gen 911, and you might want to have Officer Myers to come in and talk to you about the proposed items. We put in $130,000 for this year. It's a single source from Motorola, but the upgrades, we have received a quote from Motorola, will be $250,000 in order to continue operating our dispatch center. And with that, we're ready to answer any and all questions that the council may have as it relates to this budget.
Okay, thank you. First up, we have the Comptroller's Department with Revenues General Government Comptroller Vance.
Good evening, City Council.
Good evening.
Mayor, good evening.
Good evening.
If you see the budget that I have prepared, when you look at the revenues, the only highlights you could see, really, there's 1 or 2. Act 345, the millage is being increased to cover the OPEB 202 funding. And then I split out for the cable the PEG amounts so that you can see what will be collected on behalf of PEG. You will also see at the end of the revenue source, you're going to see appropriation for fund balance. We are anticipating of taking $450,000 of the fund balance for PEG to do some renovations to the cable studio. So that money will come off of that balance. And you had a supplement reconciliation of that in your packet. And then the other one is Appropriation Fund Balance Act 345. When we do these calculations for the millage, it's an estimate of what the expenses are going to be, and at the end of the audit, we look and we see if there was a variance one way or the other. I'm making an adjustment because we didn't do it last year, and I'm making an adjustment to shore it up some by $400,000. So that lowers the amount that we're collecting on millage for that because we've already collected it. So that's the revenues. The general government, there's really not a whole lot of differences except for, you know, the adjustments, you know, due to inflation and whatnot, you know, the increased healthcare and whatnot expenses. And you'll see in that area, again, the other side of the OPEB funding for the general government and the Act 345 that was added this year. And then in my budget, the only except for inflationary amounts. The only change in my budget is that I've hired a part-time summer intern to handle the fixed asset software implementation to help out our department, so I put part-time money in our budget to pay the intern this summer. So.
Council Chair?
Councilman,
Should we hold our questions till after she's done, or I'm just,
Maybe.
so we don't interrupt her?
I'm done now. So,
what would you prefer to do? By the section? Let's do it by the section then.
Yeah, after she's done and she says she's done, so we can.
Right, then you
Yeah,
can
so-
ask the questions.
so basically, I gave you kind of a highlight of the revenue, the 200th fund, and my department, so.
Actually, I don't really have a
Councilman-
question, I was just, I didn't have any
Councilman
questions, I
Bazey?
was just, kind of.
Okay, on page 2, for the revenues, under section 101-000-485-000, sidewalk, curb, and approaches, you have here for last year and next year, you have 10,000. Is that how much? First question, I guess I need clarification. The first one is, where's that 10,000? Is that the sidewalks for the residents that don't comply and?
Where's
I don't
that
know.
city sidewalk?
It's an in and out, so it offsets, this is the revenue section, so the expense side would be in the 200 fund.
Okay, so I guess my question is, when we're charged, the city, a certain amount by this cement companies to replace the sidewalks, where is that on here? And also the two for the grass cutting and also for the sidewalk, because I went through both of them and I tallied up how much we paid the city for both, and I'm
Okay,
trying
so-
to find it in here. I didn't see it.
So weed cutting income, if you go down to that same page, almost down to the bottom, it's 627,000. So activity thus far this year, as of 3/31, we've collected $178,168. Okay, and then the sidewalk, I only do see that there's only 85 in there, but it was budgeted. I'd have to see what's happening. Maybe something got posted in the wrong account, but that's just what it's showing, the activity. But if you look on the 200 fund, the expense side, then I believe that's in there under the expenses in that department. Let's see.
Sorry, what page would that be?
It's 20963.
So, page 13.
Okay.
Okay. So you can see, technically, we've brought in more revenue than we've expended, but it's because of probably payments are crossing fiscal years, so.
Okay, so it says here, for last year, okay, we got reimbursed for 90,000, is that what it means, or?
No. Okay, so on page
13.
weed cutting income on page 2, as of 3/31/2019, we got $178,168. As of 3/31/2019, in the expenditures on page 13, we've expended $160,226. So there's a little bit of more collection, maybe part of it's sidewalk, I'm not sure, but we've collected more than what we've actually paid out, and it's probably, if we had a bunch of bills in June and the fiscal year ended, and then, so there's that little carryover. So that would be my explanation of the
And all of that money is including with the permit fees and all of that would be
Correct.
lumped together?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought so, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. So, is there any other questions?
Okay, so with that money for both the grass cutting that were being charged and the sidewalk, so whatever, okay, like I said, I went through the whole year and I tallied it up. Whatever, I know there's a gap already. So if somebody doesn't pay, where does it go? Somebody mentioned at the last budget meeting that it goes against their taxes. So how do we know that that money was reimbursed to the city?
It would be, I believe that's under, it would be under the tax bills. That would go through there, I believe, you know, when they collect it, so it's in a delinquent area. I don't think it, I'm not positive if it hits that.
I believe
Yeah,
it
it's
does.
not going to property taxes, but
Well, I mean,
I
if
can
it-
tell you that there are some, for instance, there are the sidewalks that we do at city properties, that's a cost. We don't charge ourselves for that. So we had to do some of the sidewalks out here at City Hall and a couple of rec centers, and those are done.
That's not, no, that's something different.
Why don't you explain how that money comes in?
So when people don't pay for their weed cutting and the sidewalk, if they agree to have the city do it and we get billed and they don't pay it, it goes on their tax bill, correct? So where does it go after we collect it? Does it go back into those accounts, or is it within the delinquent tax?
Well, then we fund transfer it from tax to general fund with the breakdown, so that would then turn over to your department on how you allocate
So yeah,
that
so
out.
it probably does go in there. I'd have to go back and look, but yeah, so I wasn't sure. But because if they don't pay it and it gets on their tax bill, then it will get allocated once. Is that a part that gets paid by the county at settlement, does it, or
At
not?
settlement, that would be the people who don't pay their taxes.
Yeah,
So
but,
that's a step further.
yeah, but I just wanted to know that that's one of the refunding on settlement. I wasn't sure sometimes that
Council
kind
Chair?
of stuff.
Councilman Muscat?
And going to ask the treasurer, how does that then shown that it's a reimbursement then to the grass cutting? I mean, it goes to the general fund where it belongs anyway, correct?
Well, yeah, it goes into, so we send it to the general fund with a fund transfer that has it broken down, like, this is how much is for city tax and public safety and this and that. And then I would imagine that their office does an allocation. So I don't know if that allocation is done each time we do that fund transfer, or if they do an end of the year. I think Vince used to do an end of the year
Yeah.
allocation.
I believe so.
Where
Yeah.
everything would go into the tax, and then you would take my annual numbers and then allocate them out.
Okay.
But, you know, so
Yeah, and that's how I did it last year, too. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think that clarifies a lot of things that way.
I have a question on the PEG fees. How come there's nothing in 2017 or 2018? It's just what the requested
I broke
budget-
it down this year. It was always included, so if Comcast pay the both parts, the PEG and the franchise was just put in one account for just Comcast, and the other one was WOW, and the other one was AT&T. So now, to make it so that you can see it, it's more clear, I backed out the amount of PEG out of all the three of them and created this new GL line so that you could see actually of the money collected, what is anticipated to be PEG. So that's something new this year that I figured, since you guys were discussing the PEG, it would make it easier to see the money coming in.
Okay, continue.
I'm done, so if there's anything else that anyone
Councilman
has.
Abdullah?
Yeah, if you don't mind, so I know there's an increase in here in salary going from 67,500 to 80,000, so obviously we got to address that somehow. So I'm going to hear your end of it first, if you don't mind. Not to put you on the spot, I don't know if it's for your own salary, but, or maybe, I don't know, I'm not
When
sure
you
if the
look at that
mayor's.
budget line, what I put into the budget's the first column, and what the mayor recommended is the second. So I would defer to the mayor when it comes to the salary
Yeah,
increases.
I tried to put increases that were comparable to similar positions in other communities.
Okay. And I know we had specific discussions in this case in regards to the comptroller at the time when we were hiring Ms. Vance. Were there, and I'm trying to recollect, were there some promises, I'm trying to remember how it went, it's been a while, where we had said we would start you at this and then move you up to something bigger, or how did the conversation go during the hiring
Well,
process?
what I started her out as, you, as a group, lowered her salary. Not everybody individually here, but a majority did. So she actually is receiving less than what I hired her in as, by what, 20,000?
Yeah, what you told me I would be earning versus what I'm actually earning.
Okay, so during the hiring process, I just want to make sure I'm clear, you were told it would be 87,500, but that was not approved by the council at the time, though?
No.
No, it was because there was already a salary allocated to John, and
It was prorated?
And I kept her at John's salary because she actually had more of a background. The other difficulty is a lot of controllers, quite frankly, for a city this size, I would think would be paid $135,000 to $150,000 a year. And so when I hired her in, it was about half of what the competitive price is for a controller.
With the assumption that it was going to go up with the new budget. Is
Correct.
what I agreed, because I figured that was a 6-month trial period and the new budget, so.
So instead of getting an increase, she got a $20,000 decrease, but fortunately stayed with the city.
Thank you. Any further
That was the
questions?
only one.
Council Chair,
Councilman Wenzel?
this is going to apply to, I guess, our future meetings, but instead of showing the bulk salaries, I'd like them broken down so we can see what each person's making instead of the, just the total
It's
salary.
there.
It's in
Look
there.
at-
It's in there on a separate page that has the,
Page 21.
Page 21. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
Okay.
is there anything else?
Guess that's it. Thank you very much. Are you done? Okay. Okay, next we have Human Resources Director Sabota Perry.
Hello. Okay, so, yes.
Can you tell us what page you're on when you read
Yes, that's
that?
what I was gonna
Okay.
tell you.
22.
Right.
22.
Well, so that's up to you.
Yeah.
We can start on page 18, that's General Government, Civil
Start
Service
with general
Commission.
government.
Okay, then we go to 19, and then we'll go to HR. That's gonna be
So we're on
painless.
page 18 now. then, right?
18, no changes. So there's no changes from,
All right, any questions on 18, anybody? Okay, let's go to 19 then.
all right, even better. I took it down 20,000.
How much?
20,000. So we were, this past year, budgeted at 70,000. I think in 2019, 50,000 is going to get the job done. We've been very fortunate. Yesterday, for those of you who attended the fire department mass swearing in promotional, we've been able to secure a very good rate for an assessment center and a test writer, and that's made a big difference on the impact of the budget.
Okay, great. Any questions? Okay.
Okay.
Next
And
page is
then-
20?
22.
22.
Yeah, we gotta skip it. So, yeah, so 22 is the actual budget, and then for Mr. Wenzel, 23 is the two individuals in the HR department salaries and how they break down. And again, no change in what I had submitted from the previous year.
But I increased your salary.
Correct.
For the same reasons Linda's.
Okay, any questions?
Good job.
Hey,
Thank you very much.
kept it short. Thanks.
Next, we have the fire department with Chief Brogan.
It should be you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So I'm on 32. I don't know if you guys
32.
are on that.
32? We gotcha.
So as you're going through, you'll see salaries are up, and some of that is contractual, and some of that is the new, we did add the 3 positions. So it shows an increase in the salaries, but there's also Safer Grant income that's on a separate page. So that's, I think, $120,000 of this is Safer funds. It just shows the increase on this page. And let's see here. As where I increase things, besides contractual raises or contractual changes, I did change the overtime number. I upped that by 25,000. It went from 350 to 375,000, and that's where we're gonna have some additional training just to do one block of an 8-hour block of training off duty for the entire department is about $20,000. That just to give you that's for if everyone has to go off duty for one 8-hour block. With all the extra training that we have coming up, that's just kind of a cushion. I think we should be a little bit below that, but just to be on the safe side, I did up it by 25,000. Right now we're doing good with our overtime currently, and I expect that to stay the same for next year.
Clothing went up quite a bit too.
So clothing went up by 30,000. Some of that was, I didn't adjust it last year because, and if you look at where we're at currently on page 32, it shows we're only at $7,000. The clothing is, a lot of that is our clothing allowance as part of the contract. I think it's 2% of firefighter salary, and they use that for all their uniforms and everything else. That comes out on July, or on June 30th or something like that. So it's one of the very last, so you don't see that until it's all done. We didn't increase that last year, and it actually should have gone up a little bit as their wages went up a little bit. And so that's gonna be an increase. And the other part is I'm starting to buy ideally you're supposed to have 2 sets of gear now for every firefighter. We're just adding in hoods and gloves for right now. And so that's...
Does that usually get spent all of it usually gets spent?
Yes, every bit of it. Actually, this year we're probably going to spend more than that because of the clothing allowance at the end of the year.
Councilwoman Hicks Clayton.
Yeah. Chief, do you have a capital outlay projected report for your spending?
I do. Actually, we'll probably pass those out, yeah. And the front sheet of what you're going to get is going to show what was budgeted for last year and then what I budgeted this year. And if there's a difference, you'll see the difference in the last column. And then the second page is the capital outlay expenses.
Councilman Abdullah?
Chief, can you just describe the last one there on page 33, the ALS bonus?
The ALS bonus, that's another contractual. It's a 10% bonus for all firefighters that maintain their paramedic license.
Maintain, I'm sorry, which license?
For their paramedic license.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been in the contract for as long as we've been.
Got to be at least 25 years, 30 years.
Yeah, it was the limited advance before, and now it's that's actually, there's several departments that don't have, it's not mandatory to maintain your license, and some people are letting their license lapse due to sometimes people are getting burnt out from being on the squad. And I know some departments, even though, that's a significant amount of money, a 10% bonus, and they don't want the bonus, they just don't want to be on the ambulance anymore. And they've had so many people dropping out of the program that now there's some programs, won't mention who they are, but there's some programs not too far from us that are in danger of losing their paramedic status. They may have to stop their squads or go down to basic. So this is one of the ways that we keep people motivated. And I mean, there's many ways. Our guys are really good guys, but this is how you keep them invested in the paramedic program.
Councilman Wenzel?
I have 3 things. That ALS bonus is, now that's if they keep their license up, is that what you said?
Correct, yeah.
Now, do we pay for the training for that license?
We do.
Okay. And also now, the clothing, does that include everything, like the uniform you're wearing, everything?
What they do, yeah, so they get I think it's a 2% check. So they get a check for 2%, and then they're expected to keep up all of their clothing, their dress blues or shoes, everything that they need. And so they're given cash, but then they're expected to keep their uniforms up to date.
Buy it through the department?
No, they buy it through Ali Brothers is who we typically use, but they could buy it anywhere as long as it's going to be. There's a certain brand. Our rules and regulations spell out the specific brand that you need to buy. And then every year we have uniform inspections where we go through and make sure they have so many sets of pants, so many sets of long sleeve, short sleeve shirts, t-shirts that are not, you don't want to fade in holes and don't want them looking crappy. So that kind of thing.
Is that a once a year?
Once a year we do the uniform inspection, and they get a check once a year. So we do the uniform inspection about a month before they get their uniform allowance, and then they get their allowance, and then we do a second one if they needed to buy. So they have the money to go out and buy the things if they need to update their wardrobes.
One other thing is, how does a firefighter get overtime?
So there's many ways, but if we have a minimum staffing. So you have to have a minimum of 8 guys on duty, and if we fall below that, then we have to call in overtime to keep all the trucks properly staffed. So we won't schedule below that, but if someone takes a sick day or if something else comes up, if they're sent off to training or union release or school release or something along those lines, that could result in overtime.
Sure.
But they can't take like comp time, personal time. That's not allowed if we're at our minimum staffing, so that won't cause overtime.
I'm sure you take into consideration how much they worked the day prior or something like that. That comes into play.
Yeah, when we're calling people in for overtime, yeah, there's quite a system for that, and then it's based on hours, based on if there's a very specific sequence that they have to follow to call people in on overtime.
Councilman Odella?
I had a question for you here. You had quite a bit of an increase on overtime. Is there a reason for that, 25,000?
Yeah, like I said, we anticipate some more training coming up, and this is just to kind of cover the anticipated training costs. And I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to fall below that. Just for some context, this overtime number has been as high as $1 million just, I mean, maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
And thank you, Chief. And with the union, we brought that number down. The union told us what to do to bring the number down, but it was $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, and we don't see those kind of numbers anymore.
No, yeah, that's been a big accomplishment to get it anywhere near. I mean, I don't think we've been under $400,000 in a long, long time. So to be where we're at right now is really good. The guys are doing really well.
Good job.
Council Chair?
Councilman Muscat?
How does our city compare with other cities that are comparable to the city with the manpowers as far as captains and lieutenants and all of that? Are we over what other cities are, or how is that?
No, we're actually very comparable. You know, we just added the battalion chief position. We were the only department in the area that didn't have battalion chiefs except for Inkster and Garden City, and those only have one station. So anyone with 2 stations or above has battalion chiefs except for us. A battalion chief is a command officer, where a captain or lieutenant is a company officer. And so for us, we have you have 2 company officers at each station. And we have something to keep our, part of our work schedule includes something called a Kelly Day, and that's to keep us at a 48-hour work week. You have to have a Kelly Day every X amount of days to keep your hours within FLSA. We have to keep it at the 48-hour work week, and that's how we maintain that. So part of the regular schedule, you're gonna have a captain off, and when the captain's off, the lieutenant steps up to fill in that role. And so that's why you have to have 2 officers on every shift. And that's another very standard thing. And as far as, I mean, are you talking about total manpower, or are you talking about just the officers? I think sometimes people get confused when they hear, so we have, our officers are the captains and lieutenants and now battalion chiefs. Below that, there are different classifications of firefighters. A pump operator is a classification of a firefighter. The pump operators are the ones who drive the trucks, and you know, there's a whole lot that goes into that, but that's not an officer position. It's not a rank, it's a classification of firefighter.
I got another question.
Councilman?
On your capital outlay, what is turnout replacement?
That's our gear. So we have to replace so many sets every year. The NFPA says every 10 years you have to get new gear. And then we start sending it out for testing when it gets close. We've had gear where we sent out for testing and they wouldn't even return it to us because it had to be destroyed. So we want to avoid that because that means guys have been going in fires with gear that wasn't safe. So we do, I think we replace, I think it's 5 sets a year. And by doing 5 sets a year every 10 years, that gets us 50 sets. And so that's been the goal. We just had to up that number recently. Like I said, ideally you'd get to where you had 2 sets for the guys, or at least a spare set that's serviceable. So after you have a fire, you're supposed to wash your gear, which we do, but we do it when we get off duty the next day. So if you have 2 fires, or if you have to wear it again in a car accident, you got wet, dirty gear on with soot on it, and that's where you get into the problem with cancer. You really absorb, I guess, through your neck. This is what all the studies have shown. So our hoods, so we're buying all new hoods for everybody. Second hoods for everyone, second set of gloves for everyone. So after a fire, you don't have to put that back on again. You can take those and get them washed, and then you have another set. That's our Band-Aid before we get a second set of gear for everybody. So when you look at turnout gear, that's what we're talking about, buying a new set. That's the bunker pants and bunker coat.
Okay, any further questions?
Where do you keep your boat?
So we just have a little John boat, and people, you know, a lot of times when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's funny, but we have a rescue boat. And it was years ago, it was someone's old hunting boat, like a little John boat, and it's kind of just back behind in the storage at the north end. But when the south end floods, someone's having a heart attack, you can't get the truck down there, you can't get the stretcher down there, and so we push the boat down, put them in the boat, and we push them back down to the squad. I mean, we use that every year, so it's a real thing. So yep.
Oh, this is a real thing. Okay.
So we have a Dearborn Heights Navy then?
Yeah, that's right. We need new admirals. That's going to be our next position that HR is going to be writing for. No.
Any further questions, anybody? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Next, we have Information Technology Director Feldkamp.
I don't think he planned on being here this early, right?
Yeah, I know, we kind of moved along quicker.
The next one. But what usually happens, because you never know if it's later or more, I understand you have your own internal schedule, and as chair, you can stick to times, but maybe we do the next ones immediately followed by.
Well, that's what it was supposed to, all times are approximate.
Well, so either way, I texted him when they went up, so he should be here in 10 minutes. So I don't know if you can take him out of turn or not.
You know what, I don't have a problem taking out a turn, because we seem to be moving along pretty quick.
We do it all the time.
Yeah.
Take a minute break.
Okay, do we have Building and Engineering?
Let's go to the bathroom.
So for the personal budget, it's page 34 and 35. I can start real quick. If you, one thing you'll notice right off the bat is we want to increase the full-time personnel in the budget department. What I propose to the mayor is decreasing. Currently, there's one full-time inspector, 4 part-time inspectors. So what I propose to the mayor is to decrease 2 of the part-time positions and add 2 full-time positions. So we would have a total of 3 full-time inspectors as well as building officials. Well, 2 of them are building officials. Currently, we have a part-timer doing a lot of the plan review. One of our part-time building officials is doing most of the plan review. That can be done. That doesn't require going in front of the Planning Commission. So I think it would open up some opportunities. My proposal is have one person oversee all the plan review, have another person, full-time person, review all the new projects so that we have a regular person in contact with the development that's going on, doing weekly visits to sites, keeping up with the job sites, the construction sites, and making sure that inspections are being scheduled regularly so that we can move that process along.
Sure.
Councilman Abdullah?
We all set, Jack?
Sure.
Or you had more?
I have more, but...
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The other thing you're going to notice is that there's an increase in capital outlay. One of the things that is a common inquiry from lots of folks is, and this has been a project that the mayor's wanted to do for a number of years now, is to automate the building department in a way that it's accessible to the public and most importantly to realtors who do most of the transactions, a lot of the transactions at the building department. So the first step in doing that is purchasing field inspection tablets for all the inspectors, similar to what we did, some of you that are here now approved years ago. We got field inspection tablets for the ordinance department. It completely changed the process and how they did things, and we're looking forward to the same thing with the building department. You can really survey most cities in the area, and they're all doing this. They have tablets in the field. They're able to take pictures. They come back. They sync their tablet. Everything gets uploaded in the system. It's available immediately. So it doesn't require a manual process. It's so antiquated the way we kind of do it, but this would make that process manual. Included in that capital outlay, I've gotten prices for the program called building.net, and what that would do is allow for a couple things. Web inspection requests online, web permits applications online, and then a contractor portal where for a fee, folks would go on and they would, for a minimal fee, they would go on and they would be able to review that information. Of course, there's a cost in setting it up. It's called building.net. There is a larger setup cost, but then the annual fee is it's real minimal. Similar to when we did the field inspection process and ordinance, there was kind of a larger startup cost. It involves a lot of training, about 4 or 5 days of training, and then the initial setup for the program, and then the fee is I think nominal. You know, the annual fee to maintain it.
Was that included in the $30,000?
Yes. Yeah. And then in order to take it even a step further, and something that's going to be necessary for us to do, so since the inspectors will be doing a lot of their stuff, what we would consider online, right? They're going to sync their tablets, no paper involved, everything will get uploaded. We're going to start scanning the documents that we already have in the building department. So part of that purchase is purchasing a larger scale scanner for the department so that we can start scanning documents we already have and making those available.
Councilwoman Hicks-Clayton? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Abdallah.
Okay, so I have a few questions, quite honestly. So the first one I had is in regards to motor fuel. It seems to have increased quite a bit. Do you know why that is? Going from 2762 2017-18 activity to a projected $5,000. That would be, you want the item number? Third from the bottom.
Yeah, so part of that is, and that also includes, if you notice, there's a lease amount in there, and I kept that in there because if we do bring on 2 full-time folks, we're going to have vehicles for them.
So additional cars.
It'll be required through bargaining that they have vehicles.
Okay. Second question I had for you is in regards to building demos. That's gone up quite a bit. And I know, is this ones that we take back through the CAP program?
No.
What is that for?
Well, CAP, not through CAP. These are, it hasn't actually gone up. It's been the same for a couple of years. I'm not.
Well, on this 2017-18 budgeted is $73.96, and then amended budget went up to 50, but then we're requesting 50 again. So I'm just wondering why there's such a drastic increase.
That was activity. It wasn't actually what we proposed. We had kind of figured when the mayor and I, this is actually back when I was kind of doing, even though the budget for demos is under the building budget, I was kind of managing that process through the ordinance department. And we had increased the budget years ago when we knew that there was homes available that we could purchase. In the meantime, some homes are now going into CAP, so those are not going to be part of our consideration. But we still have homes that are more costly to rehab or rehabilitate than worth. So.
Let me point something real quick out. Didn't mean to interrupt you. There is an offset in the revenue called demolition charges, account 101000640, and it is 50,000. So both this account and the expense in the building and engineering is the same.
Right.
So it really is dependent on how many homes that we think we don't even
have to spend it all.
We wouldn't spend it. So it's a complete match. I just didn't mean to.
And I do want to comment in regards to putting everything online. That's very, very important because I tell you, it is very common almost across the board in most cities in the area that you get everything online. And I think the biggest advantage that you're going to have for yourselves is, as you know, the building department, the building desk has, a lot of people standing there, and people are aggravated. And I've always been of the opinion that's a very, very important department because that's when a buyer first comes into the city, you want them to have a good feeling about our city. And if somebody's leaving, you don't want them to be leaving the city on I don't want to say bad terms, but with just a bad vibe. And so I think this is very, very important. Next question that I had, and I do agree with adding additional inspectors. I think you've just to give you my personal viewpoint on it, it's just getting better and better and better. So me personally, as a non-council person, I could see definitely the difference, and it's getting better and better. So good job. I had a question in regards to the director's position in the budget at $75,000 from $55,000, which I'm a proponent of that increase. But in this particular case, are we? And I don't know if I should ask the mayor or ask you. Who would be, at this point as we speak, who would be the director for this proposed budget?
I'm not going to tip my hand, but I'm looking to promote with him. So that gives you a pretty good clue. And we feel that this would be the number we need to promote with them.
All right, and that answers my question. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Councilman Bazey? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Hicks Clayton.
Mine is real quick, it's just follow up. The capital outlay, would you be able to give us the itemized list of breakdowns for those expenses proposed, please?
Do you want me to send it to you?
That would be great.
Yeah, if you could send us all, that would be
And then
great.
the clothing expense is increased, and I imagine it's because of the proposed 2 new inspectors that you have in there?
None of the inspectors, when they go up to houses, they have their ID. I want them all to wear shirts that say Dearborn Heights Building Department. Whether they're part-time or full-time, they have to identify themselves.
I like that idea.
We did that with the ordinance department at first. There were, believe it or not, there were some people that didn't think they should get little blue T-shirts that say ordinance, but it we all know, we've talked about it many times about people that that we want to make sure that when people are knocking on a door that they have something. So it's just one extra thing that we can show them.
Councilman Bazey?
Okay, just the question, the IT folks that actually that they will be talking to us later, are those employed? I guess that's going to lead into a question. Are they full-time Dearborn IT, or is that something? Because I've seen like invoices. The IT folks. Actually, I have a question, but I need to have that answered first.
In the building department?
No, it's not. But my question is, okay, I guess I'll ask them when they get here. So in the past, we've had issues in the building department that you have like no transparency. You got one person that comes in. So with the new software, is that going to resolve the question if person A comes in with a home that he's going to build a certain amount of square footage? Is he going to be charged the same amount as somebody who's building half the size of the home? Or versus if they need like permits or somebody getting CFOs on the fly? So the software, is that going to be giving us transparency with that?
Well, first let me tell you something. The one thing that I will say, and I've said this for many years, because being the director of the ordinance department, there's some questions sometimes as whether or not you look the other way on things. I'm the son of Richard McIntyre and the son of Ann McIntyre, 2 of the most ethical people that have ever walked this earth. I don't do anything for anybody for any reason. I don't even take an iced tea at Tim Hortons.
I'm sorry, I'm not questioning you, Director. I'm asking you about the software. Is that going to be?
I know you want. You're not asking me that, and I appreciate that you're not asking that, but I needed to say that in order to tell you that one of the very first things I did when the mayor asked me to go over, work with Rick and the other inspectors and that staff, we had a meeting, we sat down, and I said, this is how it's going to go going forward. There are no meetings. Everything takes place at the counter. That's number one, transparent, right at the counter. We don't, unless we're reviewing a plan in the back room just because we need the space, everything's out in the open. We started developing procedures in the department so that all of us are following the same procedures the exact same way, because that's important. Same thing that I did in the ordinance department. We develop procedures. This is how we do it so that we're all doing it consistently. So will this help it? It'll help. What we're hoping to do by going online and bringing things forward is making the process of going through the building department easier and streamlining it more. So that's the main reason that we're upgrading the system, so that when someone comes in, they can schedule an inspection, and the day the inspection's done, they don't have to wait and talk to someone the next day. They can go right online, look at their inspection. It'll tell them exactly what needs to be corrected. If they have any questions, it'll have a capability where they can send an email to the inspector. The inspector can either answer their question by phone, or he can send them an email with more explanation.
Councilor?
Councilman?
We spoke about this a few years ago, and it sounds good. Job well done.
Thank you.
I remember those conversations.
You asked your question?
I do have a question.
Councilwoman Hicks Clayton?
Just for the mayor, because I heard what you said about promoting within. What is, and you don't have to tell us, but because it's already someone existing, are they moving up or are they taking on additional workload? Do you know what I mean by that?
I told you it's coming from within. I think you're trying to nail me down to a person.
What I want to know, Mr. Mayor, please don't assume things. What I want to know is a fair question. The question would have to do with the budget and the amount for the salary. That's just a fair question. I'm not trying to assume anything. I'm just asking a question, please.
I didn't, maybe I misunderstood the question. Please repeat it.
My question is as far as, because sometimes when someone's promoted within, they move into that manager position, and then that's what the salary, what you have here, which is $75,000, or is it a unilateral or a lateral move where they take on the additional responsibility into what they're already doing? Because if that's the case, that salary would be different. You see what I'm saying?
No.
You don't see what I'm saying?
If I may, I think in the past, our building director was also an inspector. So that person may continue to be an inspector.
Correct.
Okay, that's basically pretty much sums it
So
up.
they would continue at 2 salaries?
Yeah, well, not 2 salaries, it's
No,
going to
they
be 1 salary, just like...
Take on additional work.
Right.
You know, one thing that you all spoke about, and it really, it spoke to me, because I think it's important too, is...
It's the only way you can answer it.
some of the, it has been brought up a couple times, and I know Councilman Wenzel even brought this up one time about promoting people from within. So I've had some conversations recently with the mayor, looking at different options of way to structure the building department in a way that makes the best sense for our city. One thing I just realized, or just didn't realize, but one thing that just was brought to my attention just a couple weeks ago is that I can, you don't have to be a building official to do a safety inspection. So one thing that I'm going to be probably coming to at some point is talking to you about the difference between what we all call a certificate of occupancy, and then some cities or townships have something that's called a certificate of compliance. Really, at the end of the day, they kind of meet the same things. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at the BOCA code, a certificate of occupancy is issued to a house when it's first built, and it actually stays with the house forever. Lots of municipalities have taken that term certificate of occupancy and incorporated it into their safety inspections. We may talk to you about the fact that we might not need to do it that way. We might be able to just call ours certificate of compliances. It actually would be more correct if we called it that. But having done a lot of research on this, talking to people at the state, and utilizing a lot of expertise right in the building department, because the inspectors that are in there now have a lot of experience. They've worked in other cities, and they have a lot of really good suggestions. We may look at training some folks that can do safety inspections that maybe aren't typically building officials. It's not required, and many cities do this. They have inspectors, but they don't have to be a building official in order to
Are you
do
talking
an
about
inspection.
sale houses or rental properties
For
or
rental,
ordinance?
yeah, for rental properties.
Well,
for
wait a
safety
minute.
inspection on rental properties.
How could you have someone go there and do an electrical and safety inspection if they're not an electrician?
So there's certain things that are required by the state to meet the requirement of a safety inspection, a certificate of occupancy or a certificate of compliance. It's not as large as we'd think, and it'll probably be better for me to explain all this at a study session, but when someone's going in, they're not checking. An electrical inspector's real job is to look at the installation or the correction of something that involves something electrical. When you're going in to do a safety inspection, you're going in and you're looking for specific things. Under the electric code, you're looking to make sure that there are GFI plugs at all wet surfaces, in a kitchen and a bathroom.
And that they work.
And that they work. And someone can, it doesn't have to be an electrician in order to determine that, is what I'm saying. The state actually gives you some.
Well, I can tell you this, I can defeat a GFCI and fool anyone, and if they don't know what they're looking for.
Right.
As someone that's an electrical guy can do that, so I would have to question that myself on how that would go.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we're just going to send anybody out there. I'm saying it's something we can talk about, that's an option, that there are some cities and municipalities that are training people specifically in safety inspections, that they don't have to bring in an actual plumber to go in and do a safety inspection for a plumbing.
And how is that going to relate then when someone goes and closes, when they want, when the title company wants a C of O, and it's not called a C of O. I mean, am I right on that?
In general, most of them will ask for a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
So
What you
how's
could
that
do
gonna
probably
work?
just to, if you're worried about the verbiage, you could change it to certificate of occupancy / compliance.
Yeah.
And that would suffice.
It's a little shocking.
Okay,
I was a little nervous at first, but I'm just letting you know that at another date, I'd like to come and just talk about all this stuff with you guys, because it's very fascinating.
But that is not a determinant for this particular budget.
Not at all. This is going to be something we'll talk about, and maybe, maybe I can convince you of some parts of it at a later date, but not part of this budget at all.
Councilman Abdullah.
So three things quickly. One of them, with these new tablets where you said people can pull stuff online, one of the biggest advantages to it now is everything is written obviously via computer, so there's no handwriting issues.
Yep.
Or you guys used to use the, what do you call it? Oh, now I'm blanking out. Where it transfers from one paper to the other with the bluish, and you could barely read it, and a lot of times you can read handwriting, so this is a huge plus. Two things I'd like to discuss. One of them for the mayor, but the first one for you as a director, as a current deputy director. The as-is letters. In my opinion, we've got to get rid of those for certificate of occupancies. I mean, and I know this may not be the time or place, but I'm just going to throw it out there. That creates the biggest havoc with buyers and sellers when there's an inspection on a property and the cement, in my opinion, either has to be replaced or doesn't have to be replaced. That simple. But when you ask for an as-is letter and you ask a buyer to sign off on that as-is, then they get irritated as to why it's not being done by the seller, and then it creates a lot more confusion. So to me, it should, I'm just giving you my personal opinion, either you're asking for it or you're not asking for it. Not in between asking for an as-is letter on the roof or on the cement, is concerned. And then the last question I had for the mayor, in regards to the hiring process, and this is pretty much generic across the board, but I do have, and this is not this specific department, this is just generic. I just feel that every rock has to be, turned over, and I do believe in hiring from within, which I think is a good thing, but I think you should also look at all candidates. And I know we had talked about some candidates in regards to either the building department or other departments in the past. Have all candidates been given an equal opportunity? I do realize, obviously, you make the final decision and we approve it. But have you interviewed or dealt with or researched or looked into the different candidates?
Well, I haven't looked at all the candidates. I did do some interviews and some conversations with existing personnel when Mohammed left. And that was partially to make sure the department kept going. So I have not done any additional interviewing in this particular area, and I certainly would at that point.
I just think we got to look at all options.
I agree.
Just like when we put out some for RFPs and look at 2, 3 estimates, I think we should look at all options. But that being the case, I do want to commend the building department that, honestly, I was pretty scared when we had the changeover, but it's been a pretty smooth transition. I mean, there was some bumps in the road early on, but you guys are doing a good job.
Thank you.
Councilman Bazey?
So with that software that you have with accountability, I mean, you mentioned that, is there something in the software that if somebody gets paid, by FEMA, whoever, they had a flooded, say, basement, that amount so the work is actually done before the next buyer, purchase the property, that somebody actually lists the property, like say some of the work was not done. So I don't know how that software, so if there's a feed, from, okay, this particular house got this amount of money to fix their, like say, their property from a flood. So now a real estate agent comes in and, there's no disclosure on the property that, so that, is there a feed? So when that property gets a certain amount of money to fix certain issues that they had. I'm not going too much into it, but I'm a
little confused because I think if someone got a settlement for FEMA, wouldn't it go directly to the resident?
Or even our city pays for a certain, or our city pays for, let's say, like, again, I don't want to get too much deep into this, but if the city pays a resident, okay, there was an issue, we give you X amount of dollars. That amount of dollars does not get, fed into it. Like say they don't do the complete fix for the property. So how does the inspector now knows, okay, so this particular house had this amount of money that was paid?
Council, that's in the, just when they sign off, when you go into a closed session, you approve a settlement amount, that's something that Greg Roberts says, they don't have to do anything with that money. That's what that's worth. If they don't fix it, that's on them. If they blow it, that's on them.
Yeah, but how does the buyer, the new person that
That
buys
has
the
nothing-
property?
Councilman Abdullah?
So one thing that the buyer would do, and we have this happen a lot, people will come and they'll request through a FOIA, can they see if permits were pulled for a property? Or sometimes they'll want to review the whole file on the property. So that would be, and to speak to your terms of transparency with this system, those items would be available that people could look at that.
So I can tell you, from a realty standpoint, the seller is under an obligation to disclose any type of issues or problems they've had while they've owned the home. So if somebody had been given money, let's just use a hypothetical number of $10,000 on a settlement, and they had a drainage, flooding, or any type of water issue, they are under a legal obligation to disclose that to the potential purchaser, and then the purchaser would sign off on that seller disclosure statement prior to making the offer. And then after that, if hypothetically a seller lied about it and didn't disclose it, because if they got some FEMA money, I'm not an attorney, but I tell you as a realtor, absolutely, they got FEMA money because of a basement situation, absolutely they have to disclose, at least I would advise my client to disclose that to the potential buyer that they've had water damage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then from there, the purchaser should do some more due diligence, look into it a little bit further. And in addition to that, if they did their job right, or a realtor does their job right and suggests a private inspection would increase the likelihood, if a seller, God forbid, lied, of finding that information when because they have the little gadgets that they could check. Even if you have drywall, they could check if there's any moisture behind that drywall, even though you can't visually see it, where they've had moisture there.
How many folks do you think actually do
private inspections? I would say probably about 70 to 80%. Every once in a while, some people, I'll just leave it at people, will say to people, oh no, you don't need to do a private inspection because you already have a city inspection. And with due respect to city inspectors who are in and out in 20 minutes, maybe half hour, a private inspection is 2.5, maybe 3 hours. So absolutely, it's highly recommended.
Where my daughter lives.
But I do see the councilman's, concern. Absolutely, it should be disclosed to the potential person, to the potential purchaser. But the omen is on the seller to disclose that.
Where my daughter lives in Mesa, Arizona, she went through buying a house recently, and I was surprised that they don't require a safety inspection from the city, a C of O.
A lot of cities don't.
A lot of cities don't.
Yeah. But everybody gets a private inspection.
Right, and then what they end up doing in those cities, they use those instead of a city inspection, and then unlike in this area where they may or may not ask the seller to repair every item, in those cities where there are no city inspection, they use it as quote-unquote almost like a city inspection, and they'll ask the seller to repair all the items.
Mr. Chair?
Councilman
What bothers me about the safety inspection, and I don't, again, we're going to have to get a clarification on this too. How liable are we then? I buy a house from Pete down the street, I move into his house, he's got the safety inspection, 2 days later it burns down an electrical fire. Then who's liable for that if you gave it a safety inspection?
I should have brought all the information. I apologize for bringing it up. Listen, I'm the first one when I first started having conversation, because since September, I've probably visited about 12 cities, townships. I wanted to find out the best practices, what people are doing out there. And as I was going from city to township, I'm like, so wait a minute, you don't have officials doing these inspections? They're like, no, the state doesn't require an official to do it. And if a building official is required to verify that inspections take place, plumbing, heating, electrical, and that. But as far as safety inspections go, the state has a certain code list of things that have to be up to code. It changes periodically. You guys adopt codes that help make those changes, right? When you adopt the International Property Maintenance Codes, those things aren't required by the state to have a building official doing those inspections.
And that's just like hiring a private, but hiring a private inspector, still, you can't hold them responsible if they miss something. And they tell you right away, they tell you that.
They're only liable up to the price of the inspection.
At the end of the day, though, a building official oversees the process, so, and that's, and
Okay.
the building official is
I just don't
liable.
want us to be held responsible for something.
I don't want to do anything that anybody's uncomfortable with. I just want you to know there's lots of practices going on out there that I think would be good conversations for us to have.
I think that's great. We need to have a study session on that because that's very informational.
Yeah.
Councilman Constant.
So, for example, Westland, they have, I think, Ken Buccelli's company that does the inspections, I think just for apartments. And some of those persons are not, they're not licensed. When I was a state rep in Lansing, so mobile homes enjoyed a certain exemption from anything, and we had to change the law to allow cities to do a safety inspection of a mobile home at least once every 3 years, because what happens at these mobile home parks is the trailer sits there, the person moves out, the park rents it out, and no one ever goes in and checks them, and they didn't have authority, the municipality didn't, or the state or anyone, to go in there and inspect it.
That's a difficult thing, because all three of ours, Pelham, Pat's, well, actually we have 4. Pelham, 5 really. Pelham, but the ones that I deal mostly with are Crestwood, Pelham, and Pat's. When I was growing up, all of them were occupied by owners that paid a lot rent. They owned their own trailer, they had it inspected.
A lot of them were senior, 55 and older.
55 and older. They're all rental properties now, and so that does change things. And so Rick, in the building department, who does most of the inspections for apartments, condominiums, and trailers, you're right, we've had to look at what's required. One of the requirements is garbage disposal, right? You have to have a garbage disposal. Well, some of those trailers, their pipes are much smaller, and a garbage disposal won't work in some of those trailers. So we've had to, say in this situation, because of how, we don't want them to have to change all the pipes in the trailer. That would be way too costly. So that's a struggle. In fact, the other night, I was at a South Dearborn Heights meeting with Councilman Wenzel and Councilman Muscat, and we're having an issue with Pat's Trailer Park that I've been speaking with the attorney about this week, so.
We've had a lot of people come in. There's been a change in ownership, and I feel for some of the people. They've lived there for a long time, and they're finding the fees and other things are just skyrocketing.
Yeah, they're unaffordable for them.
Change in ownership, and several of the parks. Because when the trailers catch on fire, they go like that, and who's ever inside of them, they die. They're burned alive.
Yeah.
Hey, did anybody have any more questions on the budget? Councilman
I got, I guess, a question about the promotion process. It's just quickly. First of all, I'm a little confused. The mayor said he had a candidate in mind, but he didn't take any interviews from within. I'm a little confused about that, but I would expect our directors from the building and rec and DPW to come with some kind of idea or a process from real soon about how they're going to promote from within, like they did in the rec department, where Ken Greibel had trained Kim Constant, who's probably the obvious choice for director. She could come up and spend some time with the deputy director, teach that person the ropes for a while. I mean, the building department, we need something from them too, and then DPW. We got to have a program in line for this, so we don't have, so something could happen tomorrow. All 3 directors could be driving to a conference somewhere. You never know.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm not driving anywhere. I'm staying home tomorrow.
Any more questions?
I don't blame you.
Okay, well, all right, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, next we have Information Technology Director Feldkamp.
He's not here yet. Oh, he is here.
He's back here.
You're talking about the line of succession plan.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Good evening.
Now, do you have a capital outlay for us?
The capital outlay, I believe, they asked for, what is it, 165 for the capital outlay. We've worked together to talk about what the administration would like to see happen, and then what we know needs to happen with regard to the PCs. we've got you in a pretty good place based on all of the investment that came out of the grant a few years ago. Your PCs are still very adequate PCs. We are suggesting the drives in those PCs be replaced by solid-state drives, which have come down in price and they give the PC a new life. They will speed the PC up incredibly compared to what they normally are. But they are all in good performing shape right now. We've got a number of projects that we are looking to do. Our firewall for your security, the firewalls that you've got protecting your network have to be upgraded, the licensing on those, and that usually comes with a replacement of equipment. We're looking at doing that within this year's budget. In the new budget, the server at the fire department is due for replacement. It's still functional and it's still we're supporting that, but that's a recommendation by my network administrator.
Is it possible you can give us an itemization of your capital outlay instead of just the bottom line? We want to see where everything's going.
Breakdown.
We need a breakdown. We definitely do.
We can certainly do that. This is based on what they thought that they had available for that, and I can give this list to you. I'll get that to you.
That'd be perfect.
But it is all within that that amount, and we've given a 5-year plan to the administration a couple of years ago, and we are working that plan. We don't replace anything that is perfectly good. Your network switches, those types of things are key to your backbone. We've provided the fiber for all of that, and those are functioning and probably will continue to function for the next year or two without being considered dated. So we've basically, you're getting a very powerful system for very low cost. And
Councilman Constant?
Doug, we talked about the phones the other day, so the phone system here is now improved and seems to be functioning properly.
Yeah, the phone system, actually, you had a third party do that. We weren't directly responsible for that, but we did put in all of the infrastructure for that. We made sure that your network switches were all power over Ethernet switches, that which we had planned from the beginning. We made sure that you had the fiber connectivity between the facilities. That's a major milestone in the city's connectivity. It used to be through low-end T1 lines, which wouldn't support you today. We've worked with that telephone company in the deployment of the telephone system, making sure everything was debugged and that type of thing. But they are the go-to people when it comes to the actual technology behind the phones.
Yeah, I in my office had Comcast come in first, and there were all kinds of problems. So I had a independent third-party guy come in and set the phones up, and I bought the phones.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and the phone system has been extremely stable since it was put in. There were some bugs to be worked out at the beginning. We helped with fielding some of those calls and talking to the company, but to my knowledge, the phone system has been very reliable compared to the old one.
Thank you. Councilman Bazey?
Yeah, and again, like, it was mentioned, with a breakdown, so we can track, which items. I mean, I know the budget looks good for IT, but we'd like to find out, okay, this is what we're doing.
We want
itemized, so in the middle of the year, we know, okay, this was done.
Oh, yeah.
So we can track it.
Yep.
So know what needs to get done or what didn't get done.
Right.
Thank you.
Councilman Muscat?
The salaries went up $18,516. Who's getting that?
Which salaries?
I'm looking at something different. I'm sorry.
No, we have a fixed cost for you.
Yes.
We haven't raised that in the 4 years that we've been, 4 or 5 years we've been working.
My fault.
I suspect in another year we'll have a few % increase in that. We have, my entire staff is available to your city for support today. 3 of us were in the Comptroller's office for different reasons. We are available via a quick call any time of day or night. And all of my staff is full-time staff, and we're available whenever.
Councilwoman Hicks Clayton? Thank you. I just want to ask the department heads that are here their thoughts on IT, because I know originally there were some hiccups. But would you say it's improved, and are you satisfied? Department heads.
Yeah.
That's all of you.
They were all in my office today.
Very good. And you respond quickly, you said, so
Yeah,
yes.
we're available every day. I come a couple of times a week. I have another one of my staff come just to check around the departments, and we try and get him out here twice during the week, and we're available. We're doing online support all the time. We will respond. Most of our staff supports all of Dearborn from their desktop. They don't travel much to the individual desktops because we've got more virtualization. So, but I am able to send a body over here a couple of times a week. But yesterday, for example, we had a call about 2 PCs that had email issues. One was the mayor's, and another was Chrissy's machine. Both of those were resolved remotely.
So if any of you sent me an email and it got sent back, that's what happened.
You remote dial
Councilman
in,
Abdullah?
correct?
What's that?
I'm sorry, remote dial in, and you can share the screen to problem solve it out.
we can do a team viewer
most likely.
type arrangement.
So that's efficiency. Thank you.
There was an issue at one point, and I'm 99% sure it was at the clerk's office, where they would email us. Actually, Lynn can probably tell us. Remember when you'd email us and we wouldn't get it until like,
Yeah,
we would get it at midnight, even though she sent it at night. Actually, I got one at like 1:30 in the morning, and I thought,
you thought it was.
I thought, Lynn, man, you really like your job.
I do love it.
We got to give her a raise. It was like 1:45. I mean, I woke up in the morning and I'm going through my emails. It was like 1:45 a.m. She sent emails out to everybody.
I have sent emails out in the middle of the night to people, but that was not the case.
So has that glitch been corrected?
That was a Gmail account was holding those for a time period, and we found out.
As long as it's been corrected, though.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen that happen anymore.
Yeah, it was a security issue, and we set you up with Google to recognize that as an okay grouping, and I don't think we've had any significant problems.
I don't remember seeing it recently. Okay, good. Thank you.
We've done the new mail. We converted from your old system where we had kind of short notice to get it moved to a new company. I found a company, we put them on that. That company was sort of a stopgap until the Office 365 comes in. So we'll do yet another conversion on that. We've helped police with their camera systems, with their security and clemis systems. We've tackled a number of projects that are really above and beyond the scope of the arrangement, but we've been glad to do that. We want to make sure everything's firing on all 4 cylinders, all 8 cylinders.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Constant?
So do the computers here connect to the file server here or in Dearborn?
No, here. If we were to get fiber between the facilities, we could certainly host items in our secure computer room. So we've talked about that in the past, but no, we don't. Everything resides here and at the police department.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one question.
Oh, Councilman Wenzel?
Mayor, is it in the budget if, say, a city council member needs some technology information or some a little bit of training? Is that something that's available to us?
Well, don't you have training in city council?
We do have that in our budget.
So if you wanted to ask your colleagues and let's say go to a Word program, and if they say okay, that would be the account to use.
They're free at the library.
Yeah. Yeah, but I will tell you that most of those programs, it's not that complicated. Just go in there and start hacking away, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You really can't do any damage.
Oh, yeah.
Just don't hit save.
We don't consider ourselves the trainers, but we will help. If you need somebody to just kind of walk you through something, we're glad to do that. We'll assign somebody to do that, meet you.
Hey, you got a 6-year-old at home, right?
They're going to help you.
There you go, right there. Just let
Too
them do it.
expensive.
You got a 6-year-old and Melissa, you got Melissa. She knows it all.
Hey, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And last, we have the library director, McCaffrey, and we already have his capital outlay.
I need one of those.
Oh, I'll take one.
I do, please.
If you could.
How many do you have?
I have, full reports.
I don't have one.
You need one?
The capital outlay is all I need.
I'll take the full one.
Thank you, sir.
We'll discuss it at the meeting.
Mercy.
I need a full one. Yes.
Is that the one you sent?
Yep. Thank you.
What about email? Never do reply all.
Yeah.
MML will text.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you got, or if you need. I just didn't bring it.
By going to the website, they have.
You sure? Or why don't you take it? I can.
Several like online.
Okay.
You just have to click. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Okay, so really quick, I'm going to read my overview, as I usually do. So far this fiscal year, the libraries are staying on budget, the library is looking stable, and our projected fund balance will be, once again, be projected to go higher as we continue to save for major renovations when the bond expires. Libraries continue to be a destination as we had over 300,000 visits again last fiscal year between both buildings. These visitors checked out over 200,000 items, both in physical and electronic units. Patrons had close to 100,000 computer sessions logged, and the library had a meeting room attendance of over 10,000. And that keeps going up. Doesn't include study room use and Wi-Fi usage. This coming year, the same 4 goals we've had every year are going to be continue on a positive, via responsible track and salaries and wages each year. Make sure we're meeting fringe benefit costs equitably with staff, continue to add to the fund balance, and account for the structural maintenance repair of both buildings. In terms of a couple things we're going to be doing this year, maintenance issues continue to arise. This fiscal year, last year we worked on the teen carpet. This year we're going to start doing the center of the building at CK. Some of the carpet there has been kind of worn through the years. And parts of the JFK library carpet as needed. In terms of service improvements, we're going to be looking into adding delivery service. We're in the exploratory phase and the informational gathering phase of this right now. But we want to add delivery service to homebound patrons in Dearborn Heights. This has been on our radar for some time, and this year we're going to be moving forward with some services in this area, if circumstances allow. I've gathered about 10 or 11 libraries, programs from across the state on how they're doing this. Each has a slightly different approach, but we're going to be analyzing what best works with us here, gather some data on what we think the scope of the program is going to be, and then after we've done that, we may make some budget adjustments at that point, or we might be able to continue and build it in with what we have. So just want to let you know that. And in accordance with state law, we also have the new line that does set aside some money for future health care liabilities. This number is, we don't have the actuarial number quite yet. When we do, if that requires an adjustment, we'll look into it at that time. This was a rough estimate based upon the number of people we have and the estimated per person. Currently, we don't have anyone immediately that's going to be probably on the health care plan. I think one person in 2 or 3 years might be, and then I think the next person would be like 15 years down the road. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, so with that, that's the overview.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Constant?
Yep.
Mike, are any cities or townships still in the old Wayne County library system? Does it exist?
Nope.
It's gone.
It is gone. The Wayne County system was dissolved a couple years ago, I believe. Municipalities took over their respective institutions.
The Wayne County Library for the Blind, I believe, is moved into Taylor Public Library. And that Pinkerton. That's how it broke out. And what Redford is, I know early on Redford pulled out, and what Redford is, because Redford's a township library. They maintain their own institution. I keep forgetting it's 5 or 6 mile, but 5 or 6 mile road there.
6 Mile.
6 Mile.
6 Mile, there you go, thank you, 6 Mile. So yeah, they're on their own.
Okay, Councilman Abdullah?
Director, I got a question for you. This is on the revenues part. You have one that's in the red credit under app from fund balance, 60,700. Can you describe that a little bit? Give me a little more information on that.
Okay.
And that's item number 000-699-000 on the last page.
That's this year's budget. I believe that was the Comptroller that just was letting us know that it was $60,700 over in terms of what that was. So that was an expected balance of that much for this year that's going to be going into the fund balance. That's why it's bracketed in parentheses, and I believe the Comptroller just puts that number in there so everyone knows what that number is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
I will, Mayor, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay.
Just real quick, I want to compliment you. You do such a great job with our library system, and I really enjoy looking at your budget, and your salaries, thank you, are very modest, but hopefully fair for your staff, because I always notice that, that expenditure. So I want to just show my appreciation to you this evening.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this, huh? This is.
Want to open it up to the public then?
Yeah. I think before we go to the public, I think out of respect for the residents and everybody, I don't think anybody on this should be texting. I think it's very...
we need to pay attention to what we're...
Well, plus...
It's a budget.
No, it's not you. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not talking about you. But
We're not gonna
there's
name
a lot of
names,
texting going back and forth. And
I got to calculate when the numbers get big.
No. This is budget hearing. We've got to give it our full attention. They deserve the respect, the different directors, for us to listen to them. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up to the residents. If anybody wants to come up and speak or question anything. Name, address, in 3 minutes.
And so we use a timer.
Good evening, everyone. Zuhair Abdelhaq, Dearborn Heights. I'm happy to hear the mayor wants to promote from within. I hope he will be fair to promote for every department from within. And again, I hope the city council will consider giving increases to the heads of departments as they deserve it and as available in the budget. Not to go with 30 and 25%, something reasonable, something comparable to other cities around us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's quick.
Hello. I'm speaking as a resident today. My name is Kim Constant, and I live at 5527 Heather Lane. I've sat back there in the chair thinking, you know what? I don't want to say anything, but nobody else has brought it up. My new boss started yesterday. I have a new boss for the Parks and Recreation Department. I just want to say that because we continue to say we are promoting within. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Who is it?
Did that come through us?
Yeah, what?
Do we know who it is?
Who is the guy?
Secret?
Brian Haddad.
Secret boss?
He has a background in graduate of Central Michigan University in recreation, and I forget what the other degree is in.
What's his name?
Brian Haddad, Haddad.
Is he fully trained for this position?
Forgot this going.
Excuse me, I forgot to say one thing. I learned that he has a major in sports studies with a minor in recreation.
Oh, boy.
Thank you.
I wish we would have gotten a resume like we did for our DPW director and been notified about it, but.
I mean, yeah, we constantly, the DPW director was a, you know, no one tells us it's a secret. Dan doesn't want to tip his hat, you know, and now this, and
Well,
this is like,
I had no access to email. My secretary's out. I thought that a notice had gone out to all of you, and I would be more than happy to supply his resume.
Well, I guess the council chair doesn't know, so.
I mean, she's had meetings with her, nobody
this is
knew.
ridiculous.
Concerned about this. I mean,
this
is
like,
the mayor's appointment. The mayor gets to make the appointment. But you have a deputy director who has a master's degree and all these years of experience. I'm confused.
I'm
we don't
very
have
confused.
a say. I know we don't have a say.
It's not something political.
It is not political.
I'm very disappointed because we paid a deputy director for what, 30 years?
30 years.
That person did not get promoted.
Ridiculous.
Council Chair, can I have a couple more minutes, please?
Yeah, you only took 1 minute, so.
Okay.
Point of order, isn't this?
I have done my job, and I've exceeded my expectations for this position at least 150%.
Somebody record this.
Report what?
I am being lashed out
Report what?
politically. It's not because I haven't done my job, okay? I have been written up by the administration, especially one that keeps heckling and continues to heckle. And they're all lies. I tried to get a civil service hearing. I was denied that. It was set up before I went into the meeting. I was almost not allowed to talk at the civil service hearing. They then took the written reprimand away, and then I've been told it was because they were being kind to me. It's funny because people think for some reason that I must be awful stupid, because that's not the case. The only reason the written warning was taken away, well, there was actually 2 reasons. One, they knew I had the proof they were all lies, and number 2, they didn't want me to have a civil service hearing. The civil service hearing would have allowed me to ask questions of why this is being done to me. I've heard several different reasons. I don't know which the reason is, but I'll never know because they took the civil service hearing away. I don't have the right to face my accuser like people do in court. It was taken away. So it's time that people hear the other side.
Thank you.
Christina Laszlo, Charlesworth Street. I can go over there if you can have her move.
It's not political.
This is City of Dearborn Heights, please.
This is, and I just want to ask the chair and the rest of the council, I tried getting up to respond to other residents making accusations that weren't involved in the study session before, and I was told to keep to the subject matter. Obviously, there's a disgruntled employee that has some issues, but saying what she's saying, you're not going to have a human resource director get up and rebut her like this is court or debate. You're not going to have the mayor do that. You're not going to have corporation counsel do that. The mayor is allowed to appoint who he's allowed to appoint. Other council members muttering that this isn't political. You know what? It was very political when I was the only person that didn't get a raise last year, right?
But we also do have subpoena rights.
Okay. Point of order, guys.
That's great.
A right to rebut what she said?
No.
No. At this point, we're going to have to stop this.
Right now,
I think we need a closed session on this and work.
Okay, yeah. At this point, is there any more discussion in regards to the budget?
That guy for everybody.
Rank and file, right, Chris?
Okay.
Rank and file.
Okay.
Rank and file. Right.
At this point, is there any further comment on the actual budget?
Another way to know you're wrong.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty nasty.
Adjourn?
Did you hear what she's saying?
But you said rank and file, and that's pretty, that's demeaning.
He was saying that.
But you said it first.
Okay, order.
I call for
Point of order.
That's demeaning.
Point of
Talk
order.
about people that shouldn't get a raise for what they do.
Councilman. Point of order. Okay, at this point, I'm going to move to end this budget hearing for tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.